Welcome back, everyone. We had a great start to day two of Unconvention 2021 and have many more amazing sessions planned ahead. Habitat for Humanity International is our knowledge partner for affordable housing at Unconvention 2021. For those of you who have just now joined us and could not attend the sessions earlier, the recording of those sessions should be up on the platform soon. For our third masterclass of the day, I invite Mr. Anoop Nambiar, Country Director at Terwilliger Center for Innovation in Shelter, and Ms. Meera Siva, who is Lead Shelter Tech Accelerator India at Terwilliger Center for Innovation in Shelter, to speak on the topic Designing Effective Pilots. Over to you, Anoop and Meera.
Yeah, thank you, Anuba, and good morning to all of you. Welcome to this masterclass on designing effective pilots. This is the first time Habitat for Humanity is partnering with Unconvention and will grow. We've had some experiences in the past with iPitch, but first time at Unconvention. And we want to thank Will Grow for the invitation and also for the opportunity to introduce affordable housing as a topic for discussion at the forum. A bit about us. Habitat for Humanity is a global nonprofit housing organization, and we work across 70 countries across the world. And Terwilliger Center is a unit of Habitat for Humanity. And we believe a home has a long-lasting impact on improved health and well-being, better educational and economic opportunities, as well as make people and communities more resilient. And our vision is of a world where everyone has a decent place to live. So today, through this masterclass, we will be sharing some of our own experiences in working with various partners and various pilots. And we will take a case study based approach in discussing some of those experiences and learnings. We also have a few other sessions around affordable shelter, and we have one coming up later today in the evening on housing finance. We have another session coming up on affordable housing tomorrow that is on sustainable urban development and the role of affordable housing. And some of you may also have attended the session on 3D printing by Twasta yesterday. So we have a couple of sessions all around the topic of affordable housing. And we hope to have some good discussions around affordable housing and the need of housing, and the impact that housing has on. So give me a second, let me get started with the session. I will load the presentation. Yeah, so let's get started. I'm Anoop Nambiar. I lead the country program for TCIS in India. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Meera Shiva, who leads the Shelter Tech program, or the work that we do with startups. The objective for the session today, here's how we are organized. Use a couple of case studies to highlight some of our own experiences in working with pilots. And the objective is to optimally to look at how can one optimally structure and plan a pilot, and how will that lead to more impact and scale and more innovation in the marketplace. So that is the central concept around which we will have a discussion today. And we will talk about some of the pilots that we have done with various partners. And we will use a case study based approach to guide through the discussion. So a bit about myself. I've been with Habitat for Humanity International for about 2 years, and I lead the country program. My background is primarily in working with social enterprises, and I've been with impact investment firms. I've worked with accelerators and incubators, and I've also done a lot of work around innovation management and technology management. The first part of my career I spent in with technology companies around technology management. Let me also invite Meera to introduce herself.
Thanks, Anoop. I'm Meera Shiva. I've been with the Terwilliger Center working on the Shelter Tech program, which is part A, which is the accelerator program. That's how we got started in the country. And we have built it more into a platform, which is a more global platform that includes various ways to engage with the startups and the ecosystem, including a fund also that exists. My background is I'm an engineer. Basically, I was in the Valley, but that's way too much in the past. I'm a chartered financial analyst, so my background is in finance, and I worked in financial journalism at the Hindu Business Line. But even there and post that also, I've been working a lot with startups in guiding them in funding and various ways to scale the startups. Thanks, Anu.
Yeah. So a bit about us. So like I said, Habitat for Humanity is a global nonprofit. We are a housing organization, and we work in local communities across the US as well as in 70 countries in 70 countries across the world. And since 1976, we've been around for almost 45 years now. We have helped about 35 million people build or improve the place that they call home. Terwilliger Center is a unit of Habitat for Humanity, and we take a market-based approach towards shelter. The global nonprofit, the other side of the organization, we are part of the innovation group, and the other part of the organization primarily works with families and communities directly and build and improve, and we directly build and improve the homes for them. Whereas the Terwilliger Center, takes a market-based approach in terms of making shelter available to the various families that we work with. And we work with the markets primarily as a facilitator, and we work with various housing market actors. It could be building materials companies, it could be finance organizations, lending institutions, it could be the government. But we work primarily as a facilitator with various institutions, and to make the flow of finance, materials, and information more efficient for the families that we work with. So that is the approach that we take in terms of the approach for the work through the Terwilliger Center. And the work in the Terwilliger Center is broadly in three main areas. We work with housing finance, we work with construction decisions and practices, and we also work with startups. Those are the three broad areas of work for us. We started almost 10 years back with microfinance. There was a need for making finance available for low-income families, and that is how we started. So the genesis of the group is in microfinance. So we primarily work, and we have a fund. We have a fund through which we work with microfinance organizations. So we work with them in making debt capital available to them, as well as in providing technical assistance so that they can design better products in housing microfinance, and that can then be made available to the families. Later, we realized that finance alone is not enough, and families also need good quality materials so that they can build their home or improve their home, and they also need access to good services that they can use, information that they can use to make better practices for construction. So that's the second area of focus for us, and the third area of focus for us is innovation. And through that program, we work with various startups in the area of shelter, and we support them through various mechanisms. We have an accelerator program, so we work with them in accelerating the startups. In some cases, we make specific grants available to the startups, and we also fund some of the startups through our internal shelter venture fund. And in addition to all three of this, we also provide market assistance to the startups that we work with. So that's the other area of focus for us. Now, the approach that we take towards shelter is one of making systemic change. So, and the way to think about systemic change is, just to take a local example, think about managing garbage in a city, right? So there are many problems, and there are many solutions that one can take. But towards a clean, if you want to have a really clean city, there are multiple levels of interventions that one will need to make, right? So to begin with, one will need to start segregating waste at the home. You would want to reduce your waste at home. You would want to maybe start composting in your apartment complexes. That is one way to think about the solution for garbage disposal. There is also the role of the city, right? So the city also will have to have an efficient mechanism in place to transport the waste to the respective landfills or other recycling centers. So that's another aspect of the solution. You may also want to work with private corporations, who are responsible for, producing a lot of this waste. So how do we work with them in having better materials? Can they play a role in taking some of these materials back, and can they use it into their own respective supply chains? So if you start looking at the system as a whole, there would be various actors, various types of problems, and various types of solutions, right? And so that is the way we also approach housing. And if you look at housing, and again, take an example from your own life, if you were to build or improve a home, so how would one go about it, right? So, it's easy for us, most of us, to go to a shop, get the materials, that you want to get, right? We also have access to architects, who can provide us with information that is needed to make the right decisions as far as construction is concerned. In some cases, we may also go to a bank to get a loan, right? So that's yet another aspect of the solution. And finally, you may also want to get the required permissions, either from your own apartment complex, your resident association, or from the government authorities, right? So if you see, those are some of the solutions, that one will need to have to end up in the construction of a home or improvement of a home. But, that is not the same situation that a low-income family would face, right? And for us, it is very easy for us to go into the market and purchase everything that we need. It is fairly easy for us to get a loan, and maybe we are also well equipped, well versed with how to move around government departments and get the required permissions. But for a low-income family, this is not possible. It is not easily possible. And our work, we work with various partners in making the flow of materials, the flow of finance, and the flow of information more accessible. And we take a systemic approach here, meaning we don't try and change the system, by directly intervening, right? So this is where the role of pilots come in. We work with, there are multiple interventions possible. So we identify some of these core problems, and we try and define a solution around some of these problems. And each of these solutions is a pilot. And then we find a partner who can work with us on that pilot. And then, we try and test that pilot, we test the hypothesis, right? And once that hypothesis is proven, then we take that learning to others who might have an interest in that. And then the hope is, many other people will follow suit, right? So that's the general approach that we take towards systemic change. So if you see the three areas, so we work with a variety of partners. We work with startups, we work with large private corporations, and we also work with government departments. Now, broadly, the three areas of focus for us is, one is around building materials and construction services, which is basically the materials that one would need to construct a home or improve a home. Then there is the finance angle, because that is often a very important component of housing construction or housing improvement. And finally, we also want to usher in innovation in this space, because new materials have to come in, new practices have to come in, which will improve productivity, which will improve quality, which will reduce the cost. So we are also constantly looking of ways to introduce innovation in the sector, right? So those are the three broad areas in which we work, and we also work with a variety of partner organizations. We work with small startups, we work with large established enterprises, and we also work with the government. And again, the partnerships are focused on what we can do with some of those partners, right? With the startups, it's primarily around promoting innovation. So what we do with them is, if they have a brilliant idea or a pilot that they want to test, we reach out to them, or they reach out to us. Some of them join our accelerator program. Some of them, come to us directly for grant support, and we provide, focused support in terms of piloting some of those ideas. And in some cases, where we see promise, we also make equity or debt investments in the startup, right? So that's one way of working with startups, and one way of introducing pilots in the market. The second way is with corporations, and with corporations, we take with private corporations, we take a slightly different approach, because most of them they have a focus on the high and middle income groups, and they're not quite keen to come down to the low income groups and start serving them. So what we do is, we show them the market potential in that segment. For this specific group, right? So that could mean downsizing the product, maybe pricing it differently. There are many ways in which we work with them, and the hope is that, look, if we are able to convince them to seriously look at this segment, then maybe other organizations would follow suit, right? So we typically work with them around a pilot, around a concept, around a single concept, and the hope is that if the pilot, the idea can be proven, then they would take it and scale it up, right? And then maybe other organizations would do the same thing. And similarly, that's the approach that we take in working with governments. With governments, again, there are different types of interventions, that we work with. So it could be on improving labor policies, it could be on training methodologies, it could be in terms of the government subsidy programs, that would flow well to the low-income families. So there are many ways, and again, the approach there is also very, very similar. We take a central idea, we design a pilot around it, and we test it with a government or a government agency. And if the pilot is successful, then there is a case to be scaled up. And like you see here, we sometimes take a very direct hands-on approach in working with startups. We work with them. Whereas when we work with the private corporations and with governments, it is a very indirect approach. So we try and demonstrate a model through a pilot, and if there is merit in that pilot, then the market would pick it up and then scale it up, right? So, and all of this, our hope is that all of this would lead to a systemic change, which would lead to more impact, more families having homes, and thus wiping out the housing deficit that we have in the country. So that is the approach that we take towards affordable housing. And so just to summarize the discussion, the scope of the pilots vary considerably, right? So it could be on one aspect, it could be either on refining a product, it could be on validating your customer, it could be on developing a specific go-to-market strategy, it could be doing a demo project like we did with Vasta. You might have seen it yesterday, if you were in the session yesterday. So we actually built the first 3D printed home with them, right? So it was just to get that first home built. In some cases, it's also to identify, who the right partners are. Will this partnership actually work, right? So I think so we want to be very, very careful with how to scope a pilot. The second one is, you also want to be, when you, as much as, the scope is important, the selection of the partner is also very important, because when you work with a partner, it is very important to make sure that, there is common interest. The interests are very, very aligned, right? So that is the other thing to keep in mind. And like I said, the approaches also vary very considerably, because, in some cases you can work directly and make a change. In some cases, you will have to work through others and make the change in a more indirect manner, right? So those are some of the learnings that we have overall, and I will stop there, and then Meera will take us through some of the case studies and get into some of these concepts in greater detail. And if you have an idea that you think you want to work with us on a pilot, feel free to reach out to us. There are a number of areas on which we work. We work in building materials. Under building materials, we work with construction materials like M-sand, construction chemicals. We work with roofing. Those are some of the things that we work with. We also work quite a bit with sustainable materials. On the housing finance side, it is primarily now on microfinance. We are also looking at other types of financing. We work with fintech firms. If there is a brilliant model to take finance at scale, we would also be happy to look at that. Labor, skilling in labor is yet another area for us. We are also now beginning to look at rental housing, which is another model for housing. So there are, anything related to housing, if you look at the housing, the core elements of a roof, the wall and the floor, I think, that is of immediate interest to us. Around the housing, water, sanitation, those are areas that we look at. Energy efficiency of homes, renewable energy, that's yet another area of focus for us. So anything in and around shelter is are areas that we focus on, in the context of affordable housing. Meera, over to you.
Sure, Anup. Thank you for laying the background of how we work with pilots. How do we um, take a pilot-centric approach to decide on what to do, and if something is working, and who are the partners to continue working with. I will take this to the next step, which is how exactly are we uh, distilling some of the things we have learned through the work that we have done as the larger organization, and also working with very specific smaller firms, and in some cases larger firms also, and what have been the lessons from them, basing which what are the to do best practices and things to avoid. So I just want to lay the context of did I do that? Lay the context of why pilots are important. For a startup, as Anup also mentioned, we work with the startups through our. Oh, is there a problem in the? Okay. We work with startups a lot in the Shelter Tech program, and a pilot is a very important aspect for a startup. As Anup also laid out, there are various reasons why a startup may need to do a pilot, and this chart here sort of shows why a startup fails based on a study that was done. Most of them fail because there is no product market fit, and in 22% of the cases there is a marketing issue, and then 18% it is team issues, right? So if you sort of ignore the team issues, the bulk of the reason is because the product did not have a product market fit, which also shows up in the marketing, because if you knew what was the value you were bringing, you would have been able to market it. So a pilot helps definitely find this product market fit, and hence avoid risks and failures for the startup. So it plays a very important role in that. And while we all understand doing a pilot or trying out something in a small scale is helpful, where we miss out on is how we define this goal, right? So the first tip is we must be a little clear on the various aspects of the pilot, rather than have this larger goal of I'll do a pilot and then see what happens. I'll do a pilot, and then based on what I find, do something, right? Exactly what are we looking to find, right? So the case is, if you say that I want to do well, right, and no matter what you did, you can always go back and say I did well. Whereas if you set a little more granular goals, like I would get a net promoter score of so much, I would have so much retention, right? Something like that. If it is a little more quantifiable, then we are getting that much for clearer, and will be able to see do the other parts of the pilot based on that, right? We'll come to that, all the planning that is needed, which comes from this original clarity. So what's the clarity of purpose, which will lead us to clarity of how we will work, which is the process, and then the partners, and all of that. And the important aspect is the pilot should be somewhat reflective of the real world. We can't do like some really tiny pilot and hope that that will give us the learning to do something that is in large scale, right? So this has to be like a miniature version of the large thing, not some toned down version of it. So this chart here is a very common picture that you will see in the results chain approach, where we look at something as, look, this is the impact or the end long-term goal that we want to see, right? So for a startup, the impact could be like scaling up of a business that is profitable, right, with great unit economics, or something like that. Or it could be like on a very specific aspect of growing this market segment, right, which is focused on rural women by by this percent, or something. So that is the larger impact. And before that, there are some intermediate things that you can look at. For example, let me do this, say, let me put up this pilot program to launch this in this particular village or in this particular district, and with that the output will be so many women sign up for this, or so many women do this, right? So there is an input that we are giving, which is actually launching this program, trying out something, selling a product, and then as a result, there are some outputs, and then these outputs translate into outcomes, which is which goes beyond the output, right? So many women signed up, so then what happened, right? They were able to get better access to, I don't know, maternal health care, or if that was the aim, right? So we must be able to track things back and have this whole chart done on what am I doing, what is the expected short-term result, what is the expected long-term result. And in some cases it is pretty obvious, as Anup referred earlier, the case of Twasta. They wanted to do a pilot, and the idea was to show that a house could be 3D printed, and that we could get some structural testing and other things done. So that was a reasonably clear objective without a lot of confusion, right? I mean, on that larger objective. But this case study I want to lay out is a little more involved, where we need to think through to say exactly what is the objective that we want to reach. This is an example of a startup that was into simple project management software. Their customers were large builders, and they wanted to see if they could go down market and reach the smaller builders, non-profits, governments, anyone who wants anything monitored, even lenders who are giving loans and want to see the progress of the house, anyone doing renovation. I mean, the market is large, so they did a scaled down version of it, and the founders were technologists. They had inputs from builders, so they did not first have the required skill set to say what is a requirement of this end market, right? Because you could build a market that fits a specific customer segment, which may or may not work in the other group. So they built a version of this light version of this product, which was cheaper, more nimble, could work off a mobile phone without requiring a desktop. Now, the questions were, is this even a target market, right? I mean, we think it all makes sense to that people would use it, but would they use it? And among, there's a huge set of customer, right? We can keep on listing everybody in the world is my customer, but it may not make sense, right? So we need to focus on who are the real customers we want to go focus on, and what are the features, because A may need something, a lender may need something, an NGO may need something else, and so on. So what are the features, right? So there were a lot of questions that needed to be answered, and then so a pilot was done, right? So and this was sort of the statement for the pilot on what we wanted to achieve with this. So the idea was to get the required feature, and it was for a varied set of customers, and the common denominator for all these customers is they all want to monitor the progress of work remotely, right? So that it's more centralized, and things were not getting missed out. And using this, the pilot, the idea was to identify the customer pain points, and then we are able to find what is the exact value to the customer through the features, and through all of this arrive at the target segment and the pricing model, right? So there were all these layers that needed to be sorted out. So it was done in 3 parts, because it's a slightly more complex thing we are trying to get out. Is identify a few set of customers. So if few were similar, they were just grouped into let's do this group. So they were like 4 or 5 groups that were created, and some set of features were put in, and in consultation with the pilot customers for each group, the software was also updated to have these basic features they all wanted, right? So that was done as a first part of the pilot. So the second part of the pilot, it moved to the next step, which was actually continue working with the customers who may have someone at the office may have signed up, but the actual user would have been someone at the field. So work with those field thing to support them through the usage and identify the issues that they face, and then get feedback from them, through one cycle, right? One project is completed, and then based on the response on it to see what's a good fit, how are they using it, what value they are seeing in it, to see what may be the target customers to look at. So this was how the 3 part of the pilot was structured. Now, by doing it like this, it becomes easy for us to see what are the resources that is needed, what is the strategy, what is the timeline. Anup, okay. What is the timeline? And each one, for each of them, because no one has unlimited resource, right? I mean, we are not, we don't have a infinite time, even if we had infinite money, right? So how will we prioritize it? By asking the question, what is the question I have? Will this guide me towards the answer? And the resource and the activities, everything has to be prioritized, and some actually dropped, because we cannot, while we may start out with all these objectives, actually when you drill down, you must be willing to throw away some things, and that is exactly the word prioritize, right? Because some will go off the list. And so in the initial stages, it was always software engineers that were needed to get the first part built, and if we didn't have that resource, we wouldn't be able to progress to the next one, right? And sales team again was needed, sort of all through to sign them up, to handhold them, right? So that relationship management was a key resource from the personal side that was needed for this project, right? So it helped identify when people are needed, and do we have that, and right, are they budgeted for this? And to cut this long story short, right, the project ran with multiple target groups, and the results showed that it was just too difficult to actually go and meet the requirements of these varied set of customers. And what the office folks saw as the need, and it was important, were not what the field folks saw, right? So and there was just not much buy-in from some customers at the field, right? So and some pilots actually did not complete because there was not much buy-in from there, right? Which was actually also a good learning, right? While we may say, oh, that's a failure, right? Someone didn't do their job well to convince someone. It just maybe we think, sitting in the in our ivory tower, that, oh, this is what is needed, but the customers are saying this is of no use to me, right? Or it's unusable for me. So what it led to is to go back sort of to the drawing board and re-architect the solution. And the happy result of that is, though it was a bit of work to redo and rethink, they were able to come up with a product that was seeing a lot more adoption, and they were a lot more nimble in what they were doing. So that is basically on the first tip on prioritizing our objectives. Any thoughts, questions, anything you want to add to that, Anup? I saw you were taking notes.
You are on mute, Anup.
Anup, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
Able to unmute myself.
Right.
No, I just wanted to highlight a couple of points. So one is to keep that end goal in mind. Oftentimes when we start a pilot, not even a pilot, I think, if you look at the objective of the organization, there is an end goal in mind, right? And when you start designing pilots, you are working towards that end goal, but then, you're taking baby steps, right? So there might be a series of pilots that you may want to design and, execute in succession, so that that'll take you towards that end goal. And just to share one of the experiences that we have had in terms of doing multiple pilots, we work with a lot of manufacturing sand firms. And like, river sand is a very scarce commodity now. Many states have banned river sand mining, and there is a dearth of sand in the market, and manufactured sand, or M sand, is an easy alternative. So we work with M sand manufacturing firms, and the idea is to make M sand available, good quality M sand available to the low income families, right? And if you see the way sand is sold today, they are now, still in many places, it is sold by a truck or a van. You buy it in bulk, right? And we worked with them to make M-Sand more easily accessible. So we started retailing M-Sand, so some of the firms, they now make M-Sand available in retail bags, like you get cement, right? So that is one pilot that we work with them on. And the second one, after the success of that, we also said, look, let us now start mixing sand and cement and then make that available. So there was yet another pilot, that was developed with the same firm, right? And during COVID, they decided to go digital, right? They were not able to do marketing physically. I mean, all of that physical stuff was stopped or was slow. So we worked with them on a couple of digital campaigns to make sand available. So I think if you see that, I mean, the end goal is to make M-Sand available to low-income families, and the end goal for the firm is to sell more sand, right? But then if you see the number of things that they do along the way, each of that becomes a pilot for us, and that is how we work with firms. And the other thing that I wanted to emphasize is on the iterative nature, right? So one, I mean, this is very, very common in software, where you take a big piece of work and you break it down into smaller chunks, right? And then there is a very defined scope, the requirements are known, and then you do only that, right? And then it becomes very easy to debug and fix it and make sure that it is working well, and then you go to the next version, right? So that iterative nature of doing pilots, so that it takes eventually towards your end goal is also important. Back to you, Meera.
Yeah, thank you, Anup. If we can go to is it in my control? So, there was the results of the poll shared, which showed that most people are have done, 90% of the people had done a pilot in the past, and 10% are currently thinking. So, everybody, there was just no one in the audience that had not done a pilot or had not thought of a pilot. So I think you are in the right session. So so the tip number 2 is the power of partnership. As Anup also alluded, there is you have to work with the partners in getting whatever it is that we want done. In some cases, very deeply, right, where we are the smaller piece and they are the larger piece to get something done, or it could be an equal partnership, or we take the larger role and they take a supporting part. But in one way or the other, nearly all pilots require some form of partnership beyond only one person doing it. So and the other advantage of having partners is that it just saves a lot of resource, because they may come with a lot of knowledge and often network connections, which we may be totally lacking and would take a long time to build. One example of a good partnership is for startups and incubators and accelerator programs, for example, right? Because they have a whole base, and then startups come and go, but these guys are around and have built this whole knowledge and network and connections, which adds a whole deal of value, right? That learning curves goes from a low base to very high base pretty quickly with partnership. And this amplifies in saving time and reaching the market, and importantly avoiding mistakes that are avoidable, right? I mean, every experience, every pilot is different, right? But we can't say, oh, if I did all this I won't fail. There are always variabilities, but at least some common things have we thought through, right? I mean, it's just a basic principle of risk management here. And in many cases things won't progress without partnership, and as Anup also alluded to, for scaling and whatnot, because your business plan may actually include working with a partner to scale up fast, and you will be able to identify them early on, right at the pilot stage. So this is some example of large partners that we have worked with in the past and continue to work with. So this both of these kind of examples happen to be in the area of skilling. This is not to say that that the area where this makes sense. For example, in the Twasta example, one of the partners that Twasta had was the IIT Madras innovation department and the civil engineering department. So they help them in giving them the land, first of all, right, to do this. And then they are also supporting them with some of the testing and others. So there are, and they are a much larger partner than what the startup is. And in the case of TCIS, we have worked with LaborNet, which is a social enterprise. It's a large social enterprise, and LaborNet in itself has 3,600 partners that it works with operations in multiple states, and working with such a partner for an innovative idea. In this case, our partnership was for training the painters, and also seeing if they could be helped with some financing options to start their entrepreneurial venture, because they do need a bit of working capital, and then nobody was giving them the loan, and right, there was a need for default guarantee, and right, so there was an innovative skilling plus finance objective to promote entrepreneurship. So we worked with LaborNet, and the benefit of this immediately is that if it works, we will be able to take the project and scale it in all these places as well, and promote this idea, and replace painters with other skill groups, right, and just be able to get a lot more leverage out of the pilot, which is very important, right, and that's why all the thought that went into the pilot will pay off, because if it works, actually the scale is going to be large, and if we have thought through all the cases, it becomes that much more easy to replicate. The other example always is government agencies and departments, which we run into a lot being in the housing space, because they are a huge stakeholder in a lot of things, and they also influence policy in many cases, in which case again getting their buy-in can help scale it. Of course, I also want to point out, maybe rather redundantly, that it's not easy working with government as a partner, because it comes with its own set of troubles, but being able to navigate that could add a lot of value, and the pilot can be used as an opportunity to build these relation and get that going, so that when it's time for the all reals, we are all set. The more common case probably is where we find a lot of use, and startups will be able to find others, is mid-size partners that one can work with. One example is Laraksha, which is an organization which works in the finance space, and they came up with a product for giving roofing loans, and it was focused on the coastal belt in Tamil Nadu, where after a cyclone and whatnot, the roofs get blown off, and then they wanted to provide loans for that particular purpose, right, which is a very purpose driven loan, which was a great initiative actually. But there was a lot more support that was needed, and the pilot was to identify what are the other gaps, right? Just giving money may not solve all the problems. So the pilot was structured to identify what are the products, the technical assistance, and various other things. And we worked with Laraksha as a partner in providing this, and seeing this pilot through. And I've also seen startups partner with other startups in getting a product right, and getting stuff through, which is a great learning experience for both of them. And then actually some of them become more lasting partnership that we have seen. And this is again one more benefit of working with accelerators, where some in the cohort could actually become partners as well in doing the pilot and continuing on. And one part of the partnership is structuring the roles, right? It's good to see what I bring to the table and what the other partner brings to the table, and then it is clear that where is the alignment of interest, and is it serving my purpose also, right? Because it cannot be that there's a saying in Tamil that I bring the rice flakes, and you bring the dust, and then let's mix up and clean it up and eat it, right? I mean, it cannot be such a relation that one person's bringing a lot of value and the other person is just not doing that much or shouldering so much responsibility. So one case where one example that is working out quite well is one startup that we are working with called Kaushal Bhav. So the picture you see is the region in Orissa where they are working. It's a tribal region, and they have a lime-based construction. So, they've come up with this contemporizing the lime-based solution and formalizing it, and they are building a home to test it, and right, also find this as a market, and right, and getting people to like it and accept it in this geography. So they partnered with an NGO called DAPTA, which works in the community already, and so working with them gives that trust and all the information about the community. And with COVID, it worked out to be a great thing, because the project took a little longer to take off, and then it was good to have that engagement and have the people committed to have this home built and not sort of back out or worry about what will happen. So some best practices in this, it helps to avoid multiple partners all in the same region. If it's okay if they are complementary, because they may have different styles, which is a problem that you need to think through. We may not think about it. We may be enamored by some partner, but actually when you start working with them, all these very practical things come and haunt us. So it's good to avoid confusions there, and build that understanding, and take the time to build a relation before jumping into it. Surely we can put a lot of things into the agreement and have it written down on the roles and responsibilities and everything, but if there is no alignment of purpose, or there is a conflict of interest that one of the partner has, and we are not clear on why are they doing this, right, and or there is some confusion in who needs to sign off or what, that all of that, it's good to understand all this before we step in. And related to that is to have a good communication channel, because things always change. Within a team itself, things are a bit complicated, especially in this remote working world. And so working with someone else who may have different priorities, different things, we may not understand why they are not doing, or why they are doing what they are doing. So just even a quick sync up to see what's going on, and understand the slippages if there are any, because something may have been the motivation, but something else would have changed and we would not know about it, right? So it's good to understand and recalibrate and communicate to do the feedbacks. So that's what I had for this section. Anup, any more thoughts on this?
No, nothing much, Meera. I think, so I just wanted to emphasize, be very, very clear on what you want to test, right? I think, it also goes back to the prioritization question on, what is the scope. So I think, we should be very, very clear on, what do you want to test or what do you want to prove as far as the pilot is concerned. And therefore, it could be you just want to raise capital for that pilot, or it may be, maybe I want market access, I want to, just tap into multiple business opportunities, or maybe I just need technical assistance. So I think, that focus on the scope is very important, and that would then lead to the choice of the partner. That is number one. And again, once you identify that, look, I need technical assistance. Let us say that, the need of the pilot, the need for the pilot is product development, and I need, good technical assistance. You don't have to go to the best partner available, right? So you also want to right size the partner, right? So who might be more willing to work with you? I think, that is more important. In many cases, we have found partners, and we generally prefer to work with partners, who have a higher risk appetite, right? Because, what we are trying to do is to prove a new concept or a novel idea, right? And they are more willing to partner with us on that journey, right? And once we prove that concept, maybe, when we scale it up, we may choose a different partner, right? So I think, what's important is to not to get the best partner, but I think, the partner that would match you in terms of wavelength and many other parameters. And finally, I think, this is not your pilot or their pilot. I think it is a joint pilot, right? So that alignment of interest is extremely important, because otherwise what might happen is, you will still complete the pilot, but the pilot will not take you anywhere, right? So I think it is extremely important. I think, for both the parties, whether it is one partner, multiple partners, I think it is in the common interest of everybody, to move towards that goal. So I think, yeah, those are some of the points that I want to share.
Yeah. So, and along with that is, measuring and feedback, right? Did we pick the right partner? Did we prioritize? Did we meet our goals, right? And then only when we measure, we are able to do some corrective actions and have some feedback here, right? So I go back to the original slide that was horizontal. This is vertical. So there is the input, which we started out with, and we did this activity, and there is a set of output, and the key point is there are all these feedback loops that keep going, which is what makes the pilot a little more effective, and it's not just a one-way street of this is what I planned, and I will run through it and then see what happens, right? So just knowing what are the things we should measure, and in what interval, because we can't be spending more time measuring than doing the work. And who should do the measurement? Should it be you or me, or a third party? And what about what would we measure after the pilot, right? After the pilot, should we just walk off, or in some cases we have to wait for the stickiness of some activities that we started to do, right? Are people using it even after we leave the scene, right? Which becomes a very important thing, because is it habit forming, right? So and data is quite important. We've done the poll. Let's see what the results show on data versus non-data preference of people when it looks to measuring and feedback. Data, like numbers, are important because it helps highlight what had happened. It's just very easy for people to visualize, whereas other things are a little more contextual, which people may or may not appreciate, right? In some context, some achievement would be huge, right? May have been really impossible, but it may not come across to someone who does not have that context. Whereas numbers are that much more important. And with numbers also, how it is presented, as in is it as a time series, right? I mean, the common thing you hear is, I had 180% growth or whatever, right? Like from what, right? If we start with a low base, things may look big. So on a relative basis, relative to others, relative to ourselves on a time series, how do we gather data? At the same time, not go overboard, because even we always start with a huge set of parameters that we think we should capture, only to find that actually most of them are not helpful or did not lead us to what we wanted, and we keep paring it down, right? Like simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? So how do we get to the less number of them, so that we are not lost and we are able to gather this on a sustained basis? So this here is may read like an eye chart, but it just shows that though we have the same set of inputs, or the similar activities, we may be working on many different groups, right? Going back to the original example of this project management software, what you look for and measure as success and metrics and feedbacks for one group, say the government agencies, may be very different from what you will do for the lenders or these banking guys, right? Because yes, if you say abstract it, it's software features, how people are using it, but just you need to be aware of what you're measuring for who, and also constantly test the assumptions, because though there are all these, hidden in it is a whole bunch of assumptions on what will happen, what is the buy-in, and right, what are the other activities that we expect to happen, and if those don't come to pass, we need to relook at things. So this is just one example of the depth of data, right, that one can look at, and this is all numbers. So this was for a project which was a modular uh, structure, and by one of the startups called Modulus Housing, and they built this unit called Medicap, which is like a unit that could be set up as a hospital for COVID, and they installed it. So these were all the metrics. So our hypothesis was, when we do this, we install it and people start using it, it will lead to, right, more people hearing about it, and then orders will come, right? So we had structured this into the very specific data we could gather, and do it on a time series basis, with number of factors we capture sort of going down with time. And of course, with not just this data capture, but with all the other points that we saw. There are many traps that pilots fall into. I'm sure all of you know, right? Nearly all of you have done a pilot or looking to do one. We should not, and a whole lot of it is the behavioral bias. So rather than reading it out in the interest of time, which we are totally running out of, I will just point out that a whole lot of it is the behavioral aspects of us, of the target segment, of the partners, and that's not having any contingencies, right? Things always change, and we think day one, hey, I drew this great results chain, and this is the map, and I've done this whole mapping, and that is my blueprint, and I'm going to build my home on it, right? I mean, it's not like that. We just need to be a lot more flexible about it. So I'll just share the results of the poll on what people measure. 50% say they measure data mainly, which means they also the idea was not to say I measure only data. Nobody uses only subjective measures. Some use data versus subjectivity depending on the context, so which is pretty good. And data is um, data is much better than subjective assessment. But at the same time, depending on the context, simply going by data can lead us down the path of ruin. So there's probably not much time, but I'll let Anup say a few words and conclude.
No, I think, Meera, in the interest of time, maybe we should, if there are any questions in the chat, we can look at that. We just have 5 more minutes.
Yeah, so there are 2 questions. I'll just quickly send it over to you.
Why don't you read it out?
Sure. So one question, someone is asking if you can also provide some help in end user financing for affordable housing.
So that's the microfinance aspect.
Yeah, so we're happy to connect you. If you have a idea that you want to pilot, we can look at that idea. But if you are looking for financial support for that organization, then maybe that's a different part of the organization. We're happy to connect you with them.
Thank you. The second question, I've also put it up on the screen. So this is to Meera. This is if you can share some more details on failure due to market fit, which is very critical for social enterprises, and how quickly or what are the symptoms to make decisions to stop piloting further.
Right. So, it sometimes, while the idea of the pilot is to fail fast and be able to move on, the thing also may be to find, have these feedback loops to understand what is causing the failure, right? A is understanding things are not working, right? Because you expect a certain kind of scale up. If it's not happening, is it due to some preventable factors or factors beyond our control? And once we know that, to see is there any remedial action one could take, right, before one would abandon the pilot. And then if that also fails, is where we need to see, right, that to actually regroup and see how else would we make this work. So it's a tough, long question. And again, it's a bit contextual on housing versus gender equality, or other sort of things, which or education, which all have different time frames to see when something is working or not. So sorry, one thing, Anup, can you put up the last slide with our contact details so that people can reach out if needed? I know we are out of time, so
no problem. Thank you so much, Anup and Meera, for sharing your expertise with us. It was really great to be part of this session, and I'm sure our participants also feel the same. Up next are sessions around moving the needle in agriculture, creating startup impact at scale, and catalyzing rural micro-entrepreneurship. You can also head over to the networking lounge to meet Shashank from GEM and also the team from Invest India. See you all there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all.